When I say Paul Mainieri, what's the first thing that comes to mind?
Man, that's tough. He's I would say he's just a legend, like a college baseball legend, right? A legend in the world of baseball in general. Um, I would say that first because I grew up watching LSU, so I grew up seeing him coaching. And then from a personal standpoint, he's one of the best hands I've ever shaken in my life personally. He's helped me out through and through. He's the kind of guy who I've played for some coaches who they act like you mean a lot to them, and then whenever you're gone from the program, they don't speak to you anymore. But Coach Mainieri is not that at all. I walked into his office one time. This was maybe 2 years ago, so I've been out for a while. Um, I was even out. I mean, I was out of pro ball. Like I'm done with baseball at this point, right? I walk into his office. He was on the phone, and I just poked my head in. I was gonna tell him hi, and he was like, "Hey, what's going on, Zach?" And he's still holding the phone in his hand. And I was like, "Hey, I can come back later, dude. It's not a problem." He goes, "Nah, it's fine." He goes, "Hey, let me call you back." Hangs up the phone, and he sits with me in his office, and we just chatted for a while. He's just one of those guys. He's got a gift at being able to build a connection and hold on to it. And I've always seen how he handles media. He always, does really well in that. But even aside from that, everyone in the nation in the world of baseball has a story about Coach Mainieri. He's just a gift at that kind of thing, man. He's been awesome for the sport, and I hate that his career has to come to an end at some point.
You're getting ready to leave LSU-E, and LSU is now recruiting you. What was the first meeting with Mainieri like?
Oh, I mean, it was awesome. So, we had spoken on the phone a couple of times, but then my first time, like face to face, talking to him was, you can tell Coach Mainieri doesn't set this up. I don't think. I don't think he sets it up for the reason of being Coach Mainieri. I think he sets it up because he just genuinely likes building connections with people. But on the visit that we take, they kind of show you around, they do this and that, and then they split up the people to where you get to have a one-on-one conversation where just like I'm sitting down in Coach Mainieri's office. He's got his desk on one side and then that like coffee table with the lounge area on the other side. So you get to sit down one-on-one with him, just an absolute legend. No families, nobody else. And it was just the coolest thing to me, just get talk to him talking to me about like, how LSU can change a person's life and like how you benefit from coming here. It's not just about baseball. It's about just world experience. It's about building the character of like a good man, and all that kind of stuff. And so just getting there to sit down with him, I think I was 20 at the time. So just getting to be able to have a one-on-one private convo with Coach Mainieri was just like the coolest thing ever to me. But that was pretty much what it was. It was him basically saying like, if you come here for 2 years, this is what I'm going to try to pull out of you. And I was like, that's the coolest thing to me.
Because he didn't even have to sell you on all that.
No, he didn't have to do it. I was coming no matter what. I was signing no matter what. But I still think it's cool. And like I said, I don't think Coach sets that up for the sake of like, I'm Coach Mainieri and every kid's going to want to see that. I think it just genuinely like building those connections with people. I always tell this story. I was trying to do because I was taking multiple visits and I was trying to do the whole, like, I'm going to talk it over with my family thing, like what every cool person would do. And I couldn't do it. I didn't have the composure to do it. So I took my visit at LSU. And I was like, I want to call my brother and see, like get his feel for everything, this and that. And we left Alex Box. I called my brother and I was like, hey, I think I'm going to take it. And his only answer was like, well, of course, like obviously take it. And so I called Coach Mainieri back. We didn't even make it to I-10. Like I made it like 2 blocks down the road. And I called Coach Mainieri back. I was like, Coach, I'm coming. I don't know why I said I needed to talk it over with people.
What is your favorite Mainieri story?
So I got 2.
Okay.
I got 2, and I can't. It's hard for me to split them up. But so my favorite from like a lesson standpoint was I had a rough week of school. Just like one of those where like the second or third round of tests always kind of fall at the same time. It was one of those kinds of weeks. Well, and I told him, the Sunday night, I was like, listen, man, this is my schedule for the next 3 or 4 days. It's going to be a grind. I'm going to be out here. I just want you to know, like, this is where I'm at Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or whatever. So he was like super accommodating for it all. He was like, dude, I totally understand this and that. We had this good conversation about it. Well, so what ends up happening was I had to pull an all-nighter the night before. I think it was a Thursday morning test or something like that. So I didn't get any sleep. I went and took this exam, and then straight from the exam, I went to the locker room and got on a trip to the Arkansas series. So I got my sleep on the plane to Arkansas. That was my rest. Well, sure enough, what ended up happening was in game 1 in Arkansas, my number gets called, and I went out there and I competed, but I just didn't have it, and I had a bad game. And after the game, I'm just angry with myself, just the way it is after any bad performance. You're just upset, and I'm just sitting there in the dugout, just kind of fuming, kind of just thinking about it. Everyone else was packed up and leaving, and I'm just sitting on the bench by myself in Arkansas Stadium after the game. And Coach Mainieri comes and he sits down right next to me, and he says, hey, how much did you sleep last night? And I was like, 30 minutes, like not much. And he goes, I figured that. And he was just like very calmly, very cool. He said, you had a really rough week. He said, here's what I want you to do. He said, go to the hotel room, get some sleep. He said, flush this performance. And tomorrow, when you wake up, start getting ready for the game, like start getting ready to pitch mentally. And he said, and tomorrow night, I'm going to have you back in the game. Basically, all he was doing there, and I don't even think I pitched the next day, but all he was really doing was telling me, like, I didn't give up on you, right? So, like, when you have those bad SEC games, it always kind of starts creeping in, like, I might not play again. It's like, it's weird because it's like, well, I did bad on the big stage. I might never get another big stage chance. And I really think that conversation just meant everything to me, because all he did, he just walked up and was like, well, get ready because you'll pitch again tomorrow. Just immediately putting an end to all of that. Like, just no doubt whatsoever. Hey, you had a rough week, right? Go get some sleep and you'll pitch tomorrow. I just thought that was the coolest thing. And it was such an awesome moment for a coach to do, because he didn't have to do that. He could have gone into the locker room. He could have just been like, well, Zach's upset right now and I'll talk to him tomorrow. But he just went, he put an end to it immediately. So that's always my favorite. I love that one. The other one is a little funnier. It was a practice in the fall, and I wasn't having a good day physically. Just had like a couple errors in a row, kind of just one of those days. And so Coach Mainieri starts lighting into me in practice. Nothing disrespectful, just a normal, like, hey, you got your head between your legs right now. Wake it up, kind of speech. But I remember at that time, I think we had 11 pitchers on our roster. And while he's fussing me, he says, as far as I'm concerned, you're 13th on the depth chart. And so I don't know who the other two guys were, but for one moment in the fall, I was behind 2 position players on our pitching roster, apparently. And I don't know who they were, but I always think that story is so funny. As far as I'm concerned, you're 13th, he told me.
He put you between 2 invisible players. Like, you didn't like.
Yeah. I guess Bregman was gonna pitch before I was. I don't know, but yeah, he threw 2 new guys above me. I thought that was so funny. Every time I look on that, I laugh.
But I'm sure, like, well, I don't know how I felt in the moment, but there was a point where you could sit back, like, dang.
It was hilarious. It was a hilarious statement. Like, there was no denying that. Sometimes you get got. Like, it was just kind of what it was. I thought it was awesome. But then, like, even with that, he called me into he texted me the next day. It was like, hey, before practice, swing by my office. So I went in there and he was like, hey, man, like, no hard feelings about yesterday, right? And I was like, no, of course not. But just to clear it up, he still handled all that even. He has a really good gift at, like, being able to connect with his players. And that was just one of those things. Speaking of that, though, so this was a couple years ago at one of my teammates' weddings. I was talking to him about it. We had a good conversation, but I was like, hey, I've been wondering this. I need to know this. I said, does everybody get one? Like, is that, like, do you go into the fall thinking, like, everybody has to get crushed once? And I have a theory about it, and I talked to him about it, and he said I'm close, but not exactly. So basically, And I asked him, I was like, is this it? I pitched my theory. Like, is this what you do? And then he explained it to me. So his explanation was this. He said, I don't show up to the field and pick a guy. Like, I don't just like show up and be like, today's going to be Zac's turn and then fuss at him all day. He's like, that's not how you handle it. He said, but what you have to do is you need to see how somebody responds to certain types of criticism, and you need to find that out before it's a debilitating moment. So like, he basically said, you got to find this out in September. Now, I personally, I was always the kind of guy, if I'm getting fussed at by a coach, I look them in the eye, I don't say anything, I don't make a face, I wait until they're finished, and I say, yes, sir, and I move on. That's how I've always handled it. It's how my dad taught me to handle it. Because he's like, it doesn't matter if you're right. If you say it, you're going to make it so much worse. So I've always kind of handled it that way. And that's what I did. He jumped me. I'm telling you, he yelled at me for like 2.5 minutes, it felt. And I just said, yes, sir, and kept it moving. The next day we were totally fine. Well, and he basically said that. He was like, so then at that moment, I knew that if there is a big moment, if there is a big game, I can jump you and you're not going to crumble underneath me. There are some players who can't do that. You know, like there are some guys who they respond well to the criticism. There are some guys who get worse after the criticism. But he was like, as a coach, you have to know your players well enough to know what I can tell them in particular moments. And I was like, man, like you are just on such an extra level of coaching.
With over 1,500 wins, a national championship, and a bunch of SEC titles, but also under the shadow of Skip Bertman's championship standard, what do you think Mainieris' ultimate legacy is?
I mean, I think he was just like a master general manager. I think he's maybe the best at that, in my opinion. That's not to take anything away from Skip. Skip built this program, right? Like Skip is the reason LSU is as big as it is. But I don't think there's many other people aside from Coach Mainieri who could handle LSU in its current state. With how big it is, with how much scrutiny there is, with how much media there is, and all this and that. Coach Mainieri has been so great at handling the program at its current size. Whereas I think when Skip Bertman was doing it, I don't think there was as much parity in college baseball. Probably not even a tenth of how much there is now. So that alone makes winning even harder. Just with the way media is now, Skip was handling media for whatever that era's media was, but it's not what it is today. You know, Coach Mainieri is consistently under a camera, like 24/7. It's crazy. It's borderline crazy. And he has just been such a master of being the general manager of the program in its current state. So I think that comparing the two, whenever people do compare the two, I'll listen to anybody say that Skip Bertman was better. That's one thing. That's fine. But to me, I don't think it's like a 1 and a 2. I don't think it's an A and a B. I think they're totally different eras. And I genuinely think that they're equal coaches.